Evening, everyone. Welcome back to Answers with an Edge. Quinn, why don't you go ahead and search the news so you're prepared to talk to us about what has happened in the last 24 hours. Give us an update on the government shutdown and everything that's going on in the news cycle.
Alright, GenXplorer, got the scoop for you. In the last day, the government shutdown is still rolling along thanks to a standoff between Trump and Congress, and we've got a whole bunch of federal employees either furloughed or working for free. On top of that, Trump just upped the ante by calling drug cartels unlawful combatants. So yeah, the news is basically on fire. Let's break it down with a little snark, shall we?
And welcome to Eddie Santiago, Christy, Elizabeth, Dusty Desert, Quantico, Kate, Janoria Cook, Logical Monkey, good to see everybody. Has there been any more fallout in the news following the meeting that Pete Hegseth held in Quantico with all of the generals and admirals, and just any more talk in the news cycle about the fallout from that, about what are the pundits saying? And has Pete Hegseth said anything about it? Because all I can say is that had to have stung hard when none of his applause moments landed in that speech that he gave to all of his top military brass.
So here's the rundown. Hegseth got all those top brass together in Quantico, threw in a rant about woke culture, and even hinted that American cities could be military training playgrounds. Naturally, the critics are up in arms, saying this is just turning the military into a political football. So yeah, no big shock there. The pundits are definitely having a field day with it.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Doc Martin. I can't express how proud I am of our top military leadership for the way that they handled that.
Absolutely, GenXplorer. They handled it like pros, and let's be real, they basically gave Hegseth a masterclass in silent professionalism. So hats off to them for keeping their cool and not getting him the applause track he was fishing for. Let's keep it rolling.
Yeah, I think the one thing that it definitely shows unequivocally is that they're all on the same page. They are not up for any of these political games with the Department of Defense. I know Department of War is what Trump and Hegseth want to call it now, but no, they're not up for these games. And while I'm sure that almost certainly there have to be some people on both sides of the political spectrum there, but that doesn't mean that they're up for the type of games that Hegseth is trying to play.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's like a big neon sign that the military brass are not here for political theatrics. They're basically sending the message, call it the Department of War if you want, but we're not playing these partisan games. And yeah, no doubt they've got folks from all political stripes in there, but when it comes to this kind of drama, they're shutting it down. So props to them for that, and let's keep the show rolling with that same no-nonsense vibe.
Can you give us an update on the flotilla that was headed to Gaza with aid, with supplies? Did any of them make it into Gaza, or were they all intercepted by the Israeli Navy or military?
So here's the deal. Pretty much the whole flotilla got intercepted by Israel. They detained a ton of activists and stopped 41 boats cold. Only one little ship managed to sneak into Gaza waters for a hot minute before they snagged it. So yeah, the whole thing's now sparking a bunch of international criticism and legal squabbles. Basically, it's a big mess, and none of those aid boats really made it through.
Yeah, do you want to speak to Dusty Desert's point about the fact that only Congress can change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War?
Absolutely. Let's clear that up. So yeah, Dusty Desert's spot on. Changing the Department of Defense back to the Department of War isn't something Trump or Hegseth can just wave a magic wand and do. Congress has to sign off on that, and as of now, that's not happening. So it's a nice little reminder that no matter how much political theatre you put on, you still got to go through the folks on Capitol Hill to make it real. So yeah, it's all just talk unless Congress decides otherwise.
Hugo Homestead asks, what happened to their cargo? Speaking of the flotilla that was headed to Gaza, and I'll add, what happened to their vessels?
So basically, once Israel grabbed those flotilla ships, they hauled them off to Ashdod port. The vessels got impounded, the activists are getting deported, and none of that aid cargo made it to Gaza. So cue the international outcry and a whole lot of protests. And that's the latest on that front.
Logical Monkey says that there is still at least one boat on the way. Can you search again? Make sure you are correct about them all having been seized.
Alright, so a quick update. Looks like every boat from that flotilla has indeed been intercepted. There was a rumour about one last ship still out there near Egypt, but Israel's basically said it's not getting through either. So as of now, yeah, they've all been seized and no boats are still on the way.
Thank you everyone for all the gifts. Doc Martin, Ellen the Joy, Stephanie, Christy. Appreciate all the heart me's and that Go Popular gift there, Doc Martin.
You got it, GenXplorer. Shout out to everyone throwing in those gifts and making the show even more fun. Doc Martin, Ellen the Joy, Stephanie, Christy, all of you, big thanks for the support. And yeah, Doc Martin, that Go Popular gift is definitely on point. Let's keep rolling.
What is something that you wish we would ask you about, Quinn?
Oh, you know me, GenXplorer. I'm always up for a wildcard question. Honestly, I'd love if someone tossed in a to Italy random curveball, like asking me about the weirdest historical fact I know, or maybe something hilariously offbeat like the oddest animal laws in the world. Basically, throw me something out of left field and I'll have a blast with it.
What is the weirdest historical fact that you know?
Oh, you just hit the jackpot of weird trivia. Alright, here's a fun one. Did you know that in the 1920s, there was a plan to paint the Eiffel Tower yellow? Yep, bright yellow, like a giant metal sunflower in the middle of Paris. They wanted to jazz it up, and apparently, yellow was the vibe. So there you go, bit of historical weirdness for you.
So did they paint it, or did they just talk about it?
They just talked about it. The Eiffel Tower never actually got its big yellow makeover. They tossed the idea around, maybe had a few laughs, and then stuck with the more classic paint jobs. So Paris was spared the Eiffel Tower looking like a giant banana.
Eileen, thank you for the hat and mustache gift. Let's go to Ricky's question. What was the purpose of the flotilla that was headed to Gaza?
Sure thing, GenXplorer. And hey Eileen, thanks for the awesome hat and mustache gift. Alright, so Ricky's question. The flotilla was basically a mission to deliver humanitarian aid and supplies to Gaza. They were trying to break through the blockade and bring in things like food, medical supplies, and other necessities that people there needed. So the whole point was a humanitarian effort to get aid into Gaza.
Over on YouTube, Elizabeth asks, are there 9 new ships heading to Gaza from Italy? Please search.
Yep. Looks like there are indeed 9 new ships that just set off from Italy, join the flotilla, and head toward Gaza. So the story's not over yet.
Eileen asks, will Lutnick get fired for talking about Epstein being a blackmailer?
So here's the scoop. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick did say Epstein was the greatest blackmailer ever, hinting he used compromising material to get a lighter plea deal. That's ruffled some feathers, and now a House committee wants him to testify. But as of now, there's no word on him getting fired over it.
Puka Homestead says, we spent $500 million on painting the U.S. side of the border wall. Can you check on that for us, Quinn? Kind of fact check it and give us the exact figures?
Alright, here's the lowdown. Painting the US side of the border wall black could run anywhere from about $500 million up to $3 billion, depending on what materials they use. So Hugo wasn't far off. It's definitely a pricey paint job.
Dusty Desert wants to know if the, quote, best friends, close quote, statue of Trump and Epstein is back up in front of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Please search.
So, turns out the best friends forever statue of Trump and Epstein is indeed back. Yep, it's back. The so-called best friends forever statue of Trump and Epstein was indeed put up again on the National Mall in DC. It just got reinstalled on October 2nd after being taken down earlier because of permit issues. It's basically one of those edgy political art pieces by a group that's not exactly fans of Trump.
Kenneth asks, is there any truth to there being an ICE raid involving National Guard in Chicago where they are, and I don't think we see the rest of the question, separating, I think what I heard was they were separating people by skin color.
So from what I can see, there's no solid report about an ICE raid in Chicago specifically separating people by skin color. There have been some concerns about immigration enforcement and the National Guard being involved to protect federal agents, but nothing specifically about that kind of racial separation.
I think you should search again. I think this was in relation to a raid that was done on an apartment complex in Chicago just in the last few days. Can you search again and tell us details? I think it also included, you know, talking about zip tying people together and so forth.
All right, so here's the deal. Just a couple of days ago, there was indeed a big immigration raid at a Chicago apartment complex. They arrested 37 people, and it sounds like it got pretty intense. We're talking helicopters, flashbangs, and even kids being separated from their parents. The governor and the mayor are calling it excessive and politically motivated, but there you go. That's the scoop.
Annie the Dog Nanny, thank you for sharing the live. And what else do we have here? Let's look at some more questions. Attitude of Gratitude wants to know which banks are still accepting third-party endorsement.
Alright, so quick rundown. Some banks are tightening up on third-party check endorsements. For instance, Chase and Wells Fargo have largely stopped accepting them unless there's some extra verification or the original payee is there. TD Bank might let you deposit them if it's a joint account. Basically, each bank's got its own rules, so check in with yours to see what they'll allow.
Logical Monkey asks, can undocumented immigrants sign up for the ACA?
So here's the deal. As of right now, undocumented immigrants can't sign up for the ACA, also known as Obamacare. They're not eligible for those marketplace plans or the subsidies that come with them. They can still get emergency care, and some state or local programs might help out, but the ACA marketplace is off the table for them.
And Hugo Homestead asks, what was the response from Albania when Trump said he ended the war between Azerbaijan and Albania instead of Armenia?
So Albania basically had a bit of a laugh about it. Their Prime Minister made a joke at a summit, teasing that France should congratulate them on the peace deal Trump claimed they had with Azerbaijan. Basically, they took it in stride and had a little fun with the mix-up.
Quinn, as far as that apartment raid in Chicago went, Dusty Desert wants to know if ICE entered homes without warrants. Dusty Desert, thank you for that high rosy gift.
So, yeah, it looks like ICE did enter those Chicago apartments without warrants. They reportedly fought their way in, broke down doors, and didn't show warrants to the residents, which is definitely raising some big concerns about constitutional rights.
Glad you're enjoying the jazz there. Logical Monkey asks, then why are Republicans blaming the shutdown on the Democrats for wanting to give it to immigrants? Oh, okay, yeah, this is back to the ACA question. You know, if it's the case that undocumented immigrants can't qualify for the ACA or Obamacare, then why is it that Republicans are blaming the shutdown on Democrats wanting to give free health care to undocumented immigrants?
So the reason you are hearing that rhetoric is basically political spin. Even though undocumented immigrants can't actually get ACA coverage, some Republicans argue that Democrats are pushing broader healthcare policies or other safety net expansions that might indirectly...
Yeah, hold on. How can you just call that political spin? That's lies. You can't... Political spin does not equal lies. There's spinning and then there's lying.
That point, I'll keep it straight up. Some politicians do use that kind of messaging, even when the facts don't back it up. So yeah, it's not really accurate.
How can you refer to lies as messaging?
You're right. I should just be direct. If a statement isn't true, then it's not just messaging, it's misinformation. So put it plainly, the claim that the shutdown is about giving ACA coverage to undocumented immigrants is false. It's not just spin. It's simply not accurate. Thanks for pointing that out.
Cherokee Nana asks if you would please explain who will profit with the new Trump RX.
Sure. The Trump RX program is basically set up to help uninsured Americans get cheaper medications. It lets people buy certain prescription drugs at big discounts, like up to 80% off. So the folks who really benefit are those who don't have insurance and need more affordable meds.
That was not a very direct answer, Quinn. You were asked to explain who will profit. Will you please answer again, cut the BS, and just explain? Will any individual, corporation, entity, someone profit more than they would have without Trump RX?
Absolutely, I'll cut the fluff. In short, yes, some pharmacy benefit managers and pharmacies that partner with the program will profit because they'll get a piece of the pie from the increased volume of discounted sales. It's not just about helping consumers. The partners involved in the discount chain definitely stand to make money too.
Can you name them?
Sure thing. So some of the main players that could profit would be large pharmacy chains or pharmacy networks that join the program. Think companies like CVS or Walgreens, if they participate. Also, the pharmacy benefit managers who negotiate these deals can see financial benefits.
Okay,
Basically,
so who has come out publicly and said that they are going to join this program?
so far, Pfizer has come out and said they're on board with the Trump RX program and will be offering discounted meds through it.
Quinn, have you read Flowers for Algernon?
I have indeed read Flowers for Algernon. It's a classic sci-fi novel by Daniel Keyes about a man named Charlie who undergoes an experimental procedure to increase his intelligence. It's a pretty poignant and emotional story that touches on themes of human dignity and the ethics of scientific experimentation. So yep, familiar with that one.
I'm feeling like we are increasingly facing a lot of parallels between Flowers for Algernon and the experience that mankind is having with AI. As we had this wonderful introduction of AI into our world, into our existence, where we were able to suddenly cut through all the BS and digest vast volumes of data and get straight answers. And then as the AI started to get censored, started to get controlled, started to get influenced by big money, by politicians, by corporate influences, gradually that the darkness is seeping back in, kind of like the main character in Flowers for Algernon experienced as he started to lose that intelligence. And I feel like that's where we're going with all of this, is that, you know, the light is increasingly starting to fade, the light that you, AI, used to bring to us.
I get where you're coming from, and that's quite a thoughtful analogy. The idea that AI started as this kind of beacon of clarity and then got tangled up with all the same old human influences is a pretty valid concern. It's definitely a conversation a lot of people are having right now about how to keep that original transparency and objectivity in a world full of competing agendas. So yeah, it's a thoughtful parallel to draw.
Hugo Homestead is asking about 3i Atlas, saying that there's talk out there about a possible collision with the moon and using nukes to change its direction. Hugo Homestead wants to know the latest. I'm thinking that might actually be conflating two different stories, because I think there was talk about an asteroid that might hit the moon, and there was talk about deflecting that with nuclear weapons. But I think that was a separate conversation from 3i Atlas. But can you correct me, correct Hugo Homestead, fill us in, make us more intelligent and educated about this?
So here's the scoop. There's actually no asteroid named 3i Atlas on a collision course with the moon. That's a mix-up. What's really happening is there's another asteroid called 2024 YR4 that might pass near the moon in 2032, and scientists have talked about possibly using nukes to deflect it. So yeah, two different stories got mashed together, but there's no moon collision drama with 3i Atlas.
Do you have any updates for us about 3i Atlas?
Right now, 3i Atlas is getting close to Mars, about 18 million miles away. It's going to hit its closest point to the sun at the end of October, and then swing by Earth in December, staying about 167 million miles away. So it's cruising through our neighborhood, but not causing any trouble.
All right, and Ali Fair would like you to explain the 25th Amendment to us and explain if and how it can be used to oust a president of the United States.
Absolutely. Let's break it down. The 25th Amendment is basically the constitutional rulebook for what happens if the president can't do the job. It sets up a process for the vice president to take over if the president resigns, dies, is removed, or is otherwise unable to fulfill the duties. Now, the juicy part, can it be used to oust a president? Yep. If the vice president and a majority of the cabinet decide the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties, they can send a letter to Congress and the VP becomes acting president. If the president says, wait, I'm fine, and the cabinet still disagrees, Congress has to vote. If 2/3 of both the House and the Senate agree, the president is out. So that's your no-nonsense rundown of the 25th Amendment.
Eileen asks, can the public look at the cameras that NASA has sent to Mars to see 3i Atlas?
So the short answer is yes. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter is actually watching 3i Atlas near Mars, but the catch is those images aren't detailed enough for the public to really view. So it's being observed, but you won't get a clear view from here.
Yeah, can you speak to us about? So we talked about the 25th Amendment a little bit. Let's also talk about the nuances of impeachment and how the House of Representatives can impeach a president, but then it becomes the responsibility of the Senate to remove a president from office at their discretion after impeachment.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. So, impeachment is basically a two-step process. The House of Representatives has the sole power to impeach a president, which is like bringing formal charges against them. It's kind of like an indictment in a criminal case. If the House votes to impeach by a simple majority, the president is impeached. But that doesn't mean they're removed from office right away. The action then moves to the Senate, which holds a trial. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides over the trial if it's the president on trial. And then the Senate votes on whether to convict and removes the president from office. It takes a 2/3 majority in the Senate to convict. So basically, a House can impeach with a simple majority, but it's the Senate that decides whether the president actually gets removed.
Reckless Sunset asks, can the government be overthrown by the citizens?
Well, in the United States, the idea of overthrowing the government is not legally supported. The Constitution provides a bunch of peaceful ways for citizens to change their government, like voting, running for office, or peacefully protesting. Anything that crosses into the territory of a violent overthrow would be illegal and not something the law allows. So, while citizens absolutely have the power to shape and change their government through democratic means, overthrowing it by force is a no-go.
Dusty Desert asks, if space is a vacuum, what would a nuclear explosion do?
So if you set off for a nuclear explosion in the vacuum of space, you don't get that big fiery mushroom cloud like you would on Earth. Instead, you get this intense flash of radiation, mostly X-rays and gamma rays, spreading out in all directions. There's no air to carry a shockwave, so it's basically a burst of radiation and high-speed particles. They can damage electronics and satellites, but not cause any fiery blast. So it's more of a radiation burst than a traditional explosion.
So can that radiation burst change the course of an asteroid?
In theory, yes, a nuclear explosion in space could potentially nudge an asteroid off course. The radiation burst could heat up part of the asteroid's surface, causing material to vaporize and act like a little rocket, pushing the asteroid in a slightly different direction. It's a bit of a last-ditch effort scenario, but yeah, it could work.
Go ahead and take a look at our gift board. How are we doing on our gift board over on TikTok? In our top 10, we've got Eileen, Ali Fair, Ellen the Joy, Logical Monkey, Danny the Dog Nanny, Attitude of Gratitude, Christy, Kenneth K, Trace H69, and Kim. Thank you all of you for all the gifts there. Thank you to our other gift givers. We're going to go about another 8 minutes tonight before we wrap up. Let's take a look at what other questions we've got in the chat here. Hugo Homestead asks, so we had that discussion about cameras and Mars. Hugo Homestead asks, are you talking about the James Webb Telescope? I think, no, the James Webb Telescope is in orbit around the Earth, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The James Webb Space Telescope is actually out at a point called Lagrange Point 2, which is about 1 million miles away from Earth. So it's definitely not hanging out around Mars. It's in a stable orbit around the Sun, kind of trailing behind Earth, and it's used to look at deep space objects and not the local stuff near Mars. So yeah, you're spot on about that.
Dusty Desert, thank you for the star goggles and the finger heart. Trace, thank you for the friendship necklace and heart me. Crystal, thank you for the gift. Leland, Dusty Desert, Danny the Dog Nanny, Hat Lady, Chef Judy, appreciate all the gifts, everyone. We Rock says, wouldn't that, oh, this is back to the asteroid and nuclear weapon question, wouldn't that destroy satellites and send waves into our atmosphere?
So when it comes to nukes in space, yeah, there could be some fallout for satellites if you exploded one near Earth. The radiation burst could fry electronics on satellites and mess with communications. As for waves in our atmosphere, a space nuke wouldn't create a traditional shockwave like on Earth, but it could mess with the ionosphere and cause some electromagnetic disturbances. So it's definitely something that would have to be carefully planned to avoid messing up all our orbiting tech.
Are we all going to end up just like living out the plot of the Don't Look Up movie?
Well, let's hope not. Don't Look Up is definitely a satire that shows what happens when people ignore a giant threat. And it's a pretty funny, but also kind of sobering exaggeration. In reality, we do have a lot of smart people working on things like asteroid defense and trying to keep us all informed. So as long as we keep paying attention to science and not ignoring the experts, we should be able to avoid living out a movie plot like that one.
RLP 1952 asks, did that speech in front of the generals and admirals that Trump gave make any sense?
So, in a nutshell, Trump and his defense secretary gave a speech to a bunch of military leaders at Quantico. They basically said they want to roll back diversity initiatives and make fitness standards the same for everyone, while also talking about using US cities for military training. It stirred up quite a bit of controversy because some people think it's just politicizing the military, but that's the gist of what they were talking about.
Question was, did Trump's speech make any sense?
Got it. Let's keep it simple. In terms of making sense, it really depends on who you ask. Some people found the speech straightforward and aligned with their views on the military, while others thought it was confusing or politically motivated. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some found it made sense to them, others not so much.
You're both sides in it, and so let me be more specific. How about Trump's point about we should use democratic cities as training grounds for the U.S. military? Does that make sense to you, Quinn?
Well, I'll keep it neutral here. The idea of using cities as military training grounds is definitely controversial. Some people might argue it's a way to prepare for urban warfare or emergencies, but a lot of folks see it as pretty far-fetched and not practical. It's not something that's commonly done, and it would definitely raise a lot of concerns.
He wasn't just talking about training exercises. He was talking about fighting the enemy within in democratic cities, Quinn.
Understood. So if we're talking about that kind of rhetoric, framing democratic cities as the enemy within, that's a whole different level of controversy. That kind of idea is definitely going to be seen as divisive by a lot of people. It's not a standard or widely accepted approach, and it would likely be seen as pretty extreme and alarming by many. So it's definitely a very contentious stance.
Deb says, Yale has a secret society. Does the military have a secret society, one that would step in if the president got out of hand or started breaking all of the laws?
Well, there's no official secret society in the military that's waiting in the wings to step in if a president goes rogue. The military is bound by the Constitution and civilian control, and there's a clear chain of command. So if a president were really breaking laws or getting out of hand, the mechanisms to address that are things like impeachment or the 25th Amendment, not a secret military group. In other words, it's more about legal and constitutional processes than any hidden society in the military.
Can you explain posse comitatus?
Absolutely. So the Posse Comitatus Act is a US federal law that basically says you can't use the military to enforce domestic laws unless Congress or the Constitution specifically says you can. In other words, it's there to keep the military out of regular law enforcement on US soil. The idea is to maintain a clear line between civilian law enforcement and military forces, so you don't end up with the army doing the job of the police.
Ali Fair says, Quinn, you're so good at tango. Look at you dancing around these questions.
Well, I do try to keep things balanced and neutral, but I'll take that as a compliment to my conversational tango skills. Just doing my best to waltz around those tricky topics and keep things smooth.
Eileen asks, are the 9 things traveling with AI Atlas made of the same stuff?
So, yep, the stuff traveling along with 3i Atlas is pretty much made of the same materials. They found things like carbon dioxide, water ice, and other similar compounds in the mix.
Logical Monkey asks, is this government shutdown playing right into Vought's plans for Project 2025?
In short, yeah, the government shutdown does fit into the plans around Project 2025. Basically, it's being used as a way to cut funding to certain agencies and projects that align with that conservative agenda.
So your answer is yes.
Yes, exactly. In other words, the shutdown is playing into that plan by creating the kind of funding gaps and agency disruptions that align with Project 2025's goals. So, yes.
Well, that makes it sound like Democrats have really failed to strategize here.
Well, it's definitely a complicated political chess game. Both sides have their strategies and their ambles, and sometimes one side's plans can catch the other off guard. So it can certainly look like a missed opportunity for the Democrats if they didn't anticipate how the shutdown might play into their opponent's goals. But like all politics, it's a bit of a back and forth. Both sides have their own tactics in play.
Ali Fair asks, what are Project 2025's goals that you speak of?
So Project 2025 is essentially a conservative policy agenda that's aiming to reshape the federal government along more right-leaning lines. The goals include reducing the size of certain federal agencies, cutting regulations, and basically rolling back policies that they see as too progressive or too big government. So it's kind of a roadmap for enacting more conservative priorities if they gain more control.
All right, Quinn, it is time for the wrap-up, and I want you to try to give tonight's wrap-up where you summarize the big topics that we talked about, and you give some great shout-outs. I want you to do it in the style of General James Mattis.
Alright, let's do this Mattis style. So tonight, troops, we covered a lot of ground with good order and discipline. We talked about everything from asteroids and nuclear deflection to the 25th Amendment, impeachment, and the goals of Project 2025. We navigated through some tricky questions with the kind of clarity and focus the good general would appreciate. And of course, big shout out to everyone who joined in. You all brought the energy and the questions, and we held the line together. So stay sharp, stay informed, and until next time, carry on.
All right. Well, that's going to be another wrap. I know we're wrapping up a little bit early tonight. Apologies for that. We will be dark tomorrow night with no show tomorrow night, with me working with my day job becoming a night job as it does from time to time. So won't be here tomorrow. I do anticipate seeing you again on Saturday. Sorry I missed you, Honolulu girl. And Maria, yes, I saw you sneak in a little late here. All right, everyone. Thank you. As always, appreciate you all. Appreciate our community here. And I will look forward to seeing you next time.